Good evening, everyone.
Unexpected intrusions of beauty. This is what life is. With words of Saul Bellow, I wish everyone assembled here a very warm good evening and a very warm welcome. I extend my heartiest greetings to our founder, Dr. G. A. Ghanshyam, and our president, Professor Dr. Jyoti Patil. I welcome Dr. Shaminas Bano, who is the North Head of ISPEL and also the event coordinator for the month of February. Dr. Nirja Sachdeva, our chairperson, Professor Kian, Pishkar, the keynote speaker, and Dr. Savita Patil, the master of ceremonies. The topic for today's seminar is Existentialism and Modern Man in Saul Bellow's Dangling and Herzog. Saul Bellow was a Canadian-American writer. He was awarded the Pulitzer Prize, the Nobel Prize for Literature, and the Nobel National Medal of Art. His best-known works include Henderson, The Rain King, Mr. Summer's Planet, Seize the Day, Herzog, Dangling Man, and Humboldt's Gift. Today, we are going to discuss his book, Dangling Man and Herzog. I would now like to invite our Master of Ceremonies, Dr. Savita Patil, to take the proceedings forward. Dr. Savita Patil is the head of the Department of English at Baba Saheb Ambedkar College, Awadh, Pune. She is a creative writer and her articles are published in leading newspapers. Her poems have been published in national and international anthologies. As a teacher, she has also presented research papers in various national and international conferences. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Priyanka. Good evening to all of you. At the outset, I would like to express my thanks to Ghanshyam sir, who is the founder of Indian Society for the Promotion of English Language and Literature. And recently, I came to know from his conversation right now on this forum, I came to know that he is really blessed with the sense of humor. The next, Dr. Jyoti Patil, madam, the president of society. And I would like to express my thanks to Dr. Shabina Bano, a creative writer and an editor, and she is the event coordinator of today's program here. I express my sincere gratitude to three of you for giving me an opportunity to be the part of this intellectual forum here. Let's turn to our next part. We have here with us a very distinguished and esteemed keynote speaker, Kian Pishkar sir. I would like to give a brief introduction of Kian Pishkar sir. Kian Pishkar sir is working in Islamic Azad University, Europe branch since 2000 as a lecturer. Similarly, he is the head of postgraduate department of English language and literature. He is the vice president of research and technology, and he is the head of Young Researcher and Talented Students Club. You know, he triggers the young mind and brain in research. So it is really an appreciative task, we could say here. Apart from these positions, he heads the publication committee in Islamic Azad University, Europe branch here. About his achievement, I would like to mention some points here. He has received the award of Top Researcher of Kerman Province in 2016, and similarly, he has again achieved the Top Researcher of Islamic Azad University, Europe branch in 2013. Moreover, he has been honored as a top writer in International Shiraz Book Fair in 2016. He has proficiency in Persian, Turkish, and English language as well. On behalf of the society, I welcome you on this forum. Now, I would like to request Kian Pishkar sir to begin his lecture. The topic of his speech is Existentialism and Modern Man in Saul Bellow's novel. Again, I welcome all of you on this forum here, and I would like to hand over the session to Kian Pishkar, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. It's a great honor.
Am I audible?
Okay. Do you have my voice now? Do you have voice?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Yes,
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 we can hear you. Yes,
Ladies
you're
and
audible,
gentlemen,
sir. You're audible.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor that for next again I am at your present. I meet and visit you. Now I am going to speak about existentialism, modern man in Saul Bellow's novel, especially about Herzog. You know that the moderns in music and art literature by radical and traditional forms, expressing sense of the modern life as a sharp break from the past and its rigid conventions. Feasible, and it is so important that we speak about this feasibility. When we understand what it means, we are well on our way to understand what existentialism is all about and what the existentialists saw themselves while expressing about philosophical matters. Then novels dealing with existentialism, the problem of the person's suffering, is particularly relevant because the hero carries his personal existence in these novels. According to Richard Lehan, he can live in terms of no future reality, because there is no future at all. And according to expect death, he can act in terms of emblem except self-definitions. All of his actions have no meaning and self-enclosed. In his existential view, man's worth is
Cancer, you can tell me when I. It's number 4. May I ask, is the slide visible to all?
Number 4.
Is it visible?
It is number 2. It is
Sir,
page 2.
Ghanshyam sir, it is visible, but you can zoom the.
Now is it okay?
Yeah, right.
Yes, it is okay. It is page 4.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. And please do tell me, sir.
I request all the participants.
Okay, I said. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
I request all the participants to be muted while listening.
To Richard Lehan, personality suffering means that if you consider existentialism frame, in this frame, any kind of the personality, any kind of the freedom is a kind of the suffering for man. The struggle to achieve this personality and its consolidation are a painful process for self-realization. That is so important that in American and European novels, we always search for, we have a kind of the quiz for self-realization of the personalities and presupposed resistance. This kind of resistance always needs a kind of the challenge, social challenge, spiritual challenge, challenge with gods, challenge with the other people and society. So we have this kind of resistance, and this resistance gives meaning to your life. It demands a conflict with the enslaving power of the world, a refusal to conform to world, refuser of the personality. If you deny yourself, if you forget yourself, if you give up, that time you haven't any kind of the personality. And if we haven't any personality, we don't have any kind of freedom. And all of them is dominated by determinism. It is the solution in the surrounding world can lessen suffering, and man easily goes that way. Acquiescence in slavery diminishes suffering, and user increases, and pain in human world is birth of personality. If you consider any kind of birth, all of the babies comes with crying, means that coming to the world, coming to this world is determined for us, and this determinism is a kind of the suffering even for baby that comes to the world in innocent form, without any guilt, without any sin, but he or she has suffering. So this pain cannot be removed. But if you don't have any kind of the personality for yourself, and if you don't have any quiz for freedom. Next one, please. Saul Bellow. Yes, this Saul Bellow is a modern American Jewish writer. You know that all of the most of the Jewish writers are so intelligent, and because they have money and because they have intelligence, they can compose so much interesting texts about the literature, about the personality, about the man, about the freedom, and about the determinism. And you know that about the Jewish, they believe that Jesus Christ cursed them, and this curse is a kind of the determinism for them, because they suppose that after this curse they don't have any freedom. Saul Bellow is a modern American Jewish writer who has attained international status through in his writing. He is concerned with plight of man in the modern world. In Saul Bellow, recurrent themes are homelessness, ruthlessness, and social alienation resulting from mixed marriages of Jews and Gentiles. Next one, please. Saul Bellow possesses an adequate historical sense. He attempts to relate human condition to mood and temper. Mood and temper because of the personality of the period that emerged after Second World War. It was a period marked by tension, anxiety, and absurdity. When he speaks about ruthlessness, he means that this kind of anxiety and absurdity. Saul Bellow's fiction is one struggle that abounds man's encounter with the contemporary reality. Which reality? The reality that society composed for us, not the reality that we dreamed. It is a mood of intellectual inquiry into fundamental question. Fundamental question, as I suppose the last lecture indicated, always comes with quiz about the self, quiz about the personality, quiz about our roots and our spirit. Related to precarious human existence, his writing reveals that Saul Bellow's novel has necessary a kind of the recovery for humans and man's pains and sufferings. Next, please, page 7. Saul Bellow stands distinct from the most literary intellectuals in his approach toward life. It tried to drift against the flow of the river, always against the American society. Most of people found it hard to see the pattern in evolution of life. Saul Bellow paints a humanizing picture. It is one of the most interesting texts that I always consider as a kind of the painting. Maybe it is a very dark and dim painting, but Herzog is a kind of nice painting for humanity. Picture of American culture, sympathetic portrait of struggle, any kind of the challenge of the man for freedom, challenge of the man for quiz, challenge of the man for freedom. Find commons to solve these problems. The difficulty of understanding philosophical and social concepts, not meanings. We always try to find concepts because we can find meanings in our dictionaries. But concepts comes from man, from our actions, from our beliefs. In Saul Bellow's great novels, Cause English language and literature, students encounter with so many misunderstandings because it is so ambiguity. We have so many layers of meaning and concepts in Saul Bellow's texts. Concepts such as modernity. What does in modernity? what does it mean, modern man? What does it mean, existentialism? And maze of life means meanings and loneliness. This loneliness can be painful or full of happiness. Which of them? The dominant ideologies, you can consider it in this form, in this concept that dominant is not always pleasant. Maybe this domination, it's a kind of the imposed one, imposed ideologies. That a kind of injection, it is a kind of the injection to our spirit. In the postmodern era, incorporate to a large extent the notion of existentialism and modern man. Dangling, his first novel, published, as you know, 1944. The novel is a form of diary. It's a kind of postmodern style, postmodern frame. And Herzog is a story of intellectual who tries to cope with the divorce in his second marriage. Most of the problems, most of the characters in Saul Bellow's works are intellectuals. We haven't any kind of the silly and stupid person because they don't have any kind of the sense for the society, for their life, for their actions and others' actions. But the characters, the modern characters in Saul Bellow's works try to be completely distinct from the other ones. They are intellectual. They are smart. And because of this smartness and because of this intellectuality, they have pain, they have suffering, who tries to cope to the divorce in his second marriage. On the average and insanity, Herzog resolves exert his emotions and ideas on paper in the form of unpublished letter, as we had in traditional novels in 17th and 18th, that we had this kind of the novels. And Saul Bellow tries to use it again in postmodern era, again in American society, American literature. If you, next page, please. As you know, modernism is a movement that distance from the development. It tries to hold to Burge's art, absence of the Burges, or more accurately, aristocratic art in the age when the Burges abandoned its claim to aristocracy. I have an idea about the modern, traditional, and classic literature and postmodern, especially in America. I believe that in American literature, we don't have any kind of a classic as a traditional form. We just have a kind of the jumping, leaping from old literature, old European literature to modernism in American literature. In the European literature, in English and French literature, we have this process. We have this normal process. It is my own idea that in American literature, we don't have this process. So we have a kind of the jumping. And it is sometimes good, sometimes bad. It is good because that we don't wait for have this process in American literature. So they come to mature literature because they had so many writers that are impressed by European language and literature. So this maturing is unwanted, but it is very good for American literature. So we can have a kind of a gap in American literature, and the social norms have been ignored here, have been removed here. And American literature, from the first stage, is matured. And we don't need to have this kind of process to come from traditional classic literature to modernism and after modernism to postmodernism and other eras. So it is one of the advantages that American literature we can find, that we don't have classic and traditional literature. We have just modernism and postmodernism. We should consider this one. And how will the art keep this art aristocracy alive? By keeping itself alive, keeping alive in American literature, with giving new spirit of modernism without having classical literature, remaining vessel of the aristocrat account of the experience and the moods. Without experience, American literature never experienced the traditional and classic literature as European, as English and French literature had. It is, of course, my own idea. If you consider next page, please. A couple of things happening here. The first, fraction of the bourgeoisie is reacting against most of that classes. Class is important classification or category that we have in American literature, that emerging from the culture. What kind of culture? Multicultural society. American society is completely multicultural society. You cannot find just one culture there. You can have American Indians, you can find Chinese, you can find Italians, you can find blacks. So it is multicultural. And again, it is one of the main advantages that we have in American literature. Because of this, American literature from the first day of the birth is completely global literature. To do this, moderns have to avoid reproducing academic look of traditional culture. We can completely put aside traditional culture in American literature, especially at its inception, largely about the cheap simulation of such forms trade of prestige. Instead, modern completely strives, have a great challenge to put old wine in new bottles. Because of this, as I mentioned, that in American culture, American society, we have a traditional and classic literature, and from the first day we have the modernism, and because we have multicultural society, we have new ideas in new frames, and everybody, because from the American people are from every corner of the world, they can understand each other of the time. Modernism is the culture of a class that no longer wishes to claim its identity. Because in multicultural society, in the United States, in American literature, nobody tries to show his or her real identity. In response, it tries to stand for purely aesthetic values. But as the Clark convincingly argues, who is finally going to be interested in the works too abstract, too subjective, and even refer to our moderns. Pedagogical culture, practical lives, the small wonder that moderns protest. We have always this protesting, feminist protest, black protest, and all of the minor class that they live in the United States, in American society, always they have this protest, and always protesting is so meaningful in literature, because it shows that this class that who tries to have a protest against the American society are alive. When they are alive, they can protest. If they are not alive, they haven't any kind of the sense, any kind of the idea, and never they have any kind of the challenge. If you give another page, please, page 10. As I said, I want to speak about the second paragraph. Human life has never been intelligible for Saul Bellow. Nobody has ever claimed to know the pattern of human existence. Nobody understands. Because of this, we have a quiz about humanity, about man, about our race, and about our root. Bellow never intended to restore the religious faith, never indicated his Jewish identity, nor was he ever angrily at morally abused behavior of human being. Because Saul Bellow believed that we are, all of us somehow abused by the gods. These gods can be leaders of the countries. They can be abused by the leaders of the wars, leaders of the society, leaders of the financial centers. All of them abused humanity. Rather rarely reflect on such questions. Again, next one. Bellow was different from other writers. I believe that he wrote such fiction, tried hard to establish positive approach about the painful subjects, a positive approach toward life and humanity, about the humanity who always has a kind of suffering. Since Adam and Eve, they fall from the east of Eden, up to now that we have so many wars, so many pains, so many catastrophes. Okay? So, he tries to consider all of them in positive form. He critically examined the religion, especially from the viewpoint of the individual as against Almighty. Kind of suffering. From since Adam and Eve, up to now, especially from the viewpoint a more powerful picture of him. And he tried to do with the helplessness of the human being, because he supposed that human beings are determined. Human beings are kind of the puppets for gods, not gods. I always indicate to the gods, mention to the gods, not a god. And because of this, individual initiative or free will, they never had it. They don't try to restore free will in the hands of the characters, intellectual characters, somebody like Herzog. Herzog is so intellectual, so smart. Because of this, he cannot stand everything in the society, even with his own second wife. Human beings have always kind of the capacity to control his own mind. Bellow's optimism stems from his belief that even medical is strong enough to rise from the dust. It's so important. It's strong enough to rise from the dust. Next one, please. These protagonists are not unfortunate heroes, or they are always lucky. They are not unfortunate. They are so intellectual, as I said. But they are forced to live life below par by circumstances. Bellow's protagonists are self-made, not social-made. They have a free will. They are not determined. They always try to have their own self-made sense, self-made personality. Bellow's protagonists consistently revive themselves by the end of each novel. There in Lays Bellow, facing human capacity. Saul Bellow, as most of the Jewish people, believe that human has a great power for challenge, great power for striving, and facing and encountering with even gods. Bellow was a real seer of humanity who instead of the moralizing showed the faith in human self-judgment of individual. He tried to emancipate human psyche from this hurting, and pessimistic ideologies. As I said, this ideology is imposed to us. It is not any kind of ideology that we made for ourselves. It is ideology that most of the time they try to impose to us, they try to show to us and give it to us, and we always try to imitate without knowing. But Saul Bellow tries to ignore this, try to remove this. Bellow created imperfect protagonist. Why imperfect? Because if character is perfect one, we don't have any kind of the change. We don't have any kind of the challenge in him or her. So he tried to show a kind of the imperfectness, and by quest, by searching new ways, by searching new ideologies, he tries. I mean, characters. Bellow's characters, Saul Bellow's characters, try to find new identity, and this identity for these smart and intellectual people is so amazing, outstanding, and marvelous. Why? Because finally, through their acceptance of the life as it is, if we consider determinism, show to the reader way how to live. And these smart people, these intellectual people, that time can be a kind of the prophet, can be a kind of the savior for us. And Bellow tried to show this kind of character for us. His writing exhibited a mixture of the rich picaresque novel. Sometimes we suppose that it is a kind of comedy, that an intellectual man, because he has a problem with his second wife, and he tries to divorce him. Now, because of this, he tries to isolate himself in his own home. No, we don't have this kind of structure. We don't have this kind of a concept. I don't want to speak about the meanings. I want to speak about the concepts that Saul Bellow tries to convey to us about how, by analyzing the culture, entertaining adventure, drastic and tragic episode in quick succession, interspersed with philosophic conversation. Because this intellectual character, because this smart character has a kind of the style of speaking for that it is unique for himself, and this uniqueness shows that he is completely different from other people. This style of speaking, style of writing, style of conversation completely shows that he is a distinguished person. It is not common people. As Shakespeare says, it is not a mob. He is a so outstanding character in American novels, American literature. And these complications that drives us to act and prevent us from acting, and that we can carve dilemma of our age. When we speak about dilemma, it is the base of existentialism, because we want to have a choice. We want to choose something between two or among so many things. This indicates that we need a kind of the way, we need a kind of the prophet, we need a kind of the leader. If we are not leader for ourselves, of course. We should, of course, I mean that Saul Bellow tries to show that it is so important for us. It is so important for us to know how we can choose when we have a kind of dilemma in our postmodern life, how we can choose between pain, suffering, and happiness and enjoyment. It is our choice. And this is the human being that should he or she, himself or herself, choose it for themselves. Okay? Next one. As I said, Saul Bellow is a kind of a painter. He is an amazing painter. He paints humanizing picture of American culture. As I said, we haven't we haven't a kind of unique American culture. As I said, we face an encounter with multicultural feelings, ideas, personalities, characters in American society. And it is a sympathetic portrait to struggle and to find commons to solve these problems. I mean that Saul Bellow, in his novels, by painting of this picture about the humanity, tries to struggle, tries to challenge with gods, and wants to show new humanity from new angles. His works have widely influenced American literature after World War II. For his literary contribution, he was awarded so many prizes, as you know. And one of them that I always consider is the Nobel Prize for Literature. And his, as you know, the distinguished contribution to American letters in 1990. Next one, please. His status in post-war American letters. Why we consider post-war? I hope we have a chance to speak about post-war literature, especially in American society, especially among feminist American society. That post-war always has a kind of a great effect on literature, especially on the American literature. Why? Because American society was completely far from the war in Europe, I mean. Just once or twice they had invaded by Japanese, and they haven't any kind of a destruction in their society. But these wars, their first one or second one, always had a great impact on American society and American literature. Maybe American society didn't involve directly in these two wars, but the effect and impact and influence of these wars and American society was so great, so giant, that we cannot deny it. And I love to speak about, if we have a chance once in next time, if we have a time for this, we speak about post-war American society and its impact on American literature. It's not a matter about feminist literature, black literature, or as a whole white literature. It's not matter. And this can be compared with that Hemingway and Faulkner, after publication of his novel Dangling, he recognized as a significant voice of the modern fiction. As I said, we haven't any kind of traditional classic. I believe, of course. I believe that we haven't. Because of this, we have matured modern fiction in American literature. Saul Bellow creates fictional characters. Why we say fictional ones? Maybe because we cannot find in the reality, in the real society, this kind of character that he has used and presented to us in Herzog or Dangling Man, who speaks about the piercing immediacy, about the frustration of their lives. They are alone, they are isolated, they are restricted. They haven't any kind of the contact and relationship with other people in society, but they are frustrated. This frustration comes from because they haven't any identity, any personality, any kind of the self for themselves. Because of this, if somebody asks why the characters in Saul Bellow's works are depressed, why they have suffering, why they are frustrated, why they're disillusioned. Before finding of any kind of illusion, it is so great paradox in American postmodern literature that social members, without having any kind of illusion, without any kind of the desire and wishes, they are disillusioned. They are frustrated about their own lives. And this comes because of these fictional characters that they have been created by Saul Bellow. Despite their different conditions, the heroes are anti-heroes. And these heroes are concerned with creating a harmony out of disharmony. As I said, before having any kind of the illusion, desire, wishes, they are disillusioned. Before creating of any kind of the harmony, they were put in disharmony. And this is American literature that reflects this man by Saul Bellow and by his works and his wonderful and excellent, outstanding works. The process of growth is never simple for Saul Bellow's characters, because men in Saul Bellow's novels want to keep intact their false idea. Do you know why? Why we say false idea? Because nobody can analyze their, nobody can criticize their ideas. Because of this, they suppose that their ideas, their ideology, their beliefs and norms are completely right. And nobody are allowed to criticize them because they haven't any kind of the contact, as I said. They want to keep their intact, their false ideas about themselves, committed, self-delusion. It is so important because they cannot understand nobody, and even they cannot understand themselves. They return to those they feel will most likely ratify their view. They seek a kind of the protection even from their mothers and mistresses. They cannot find any kind of the love, any kind of the happiness, any kind of the joy, even beside their mother, beside their mistresses, beloved, lovers, because nobody can understand them. They have a lack of communication, and this lack of communication always causes lack of understanding. And this lack of understanding always, at the end, has a challenge, struggle, social struggle. Only after their self-delusions are purged by punishing encounters with the wives, enemies, and their secret fears, they experience an inner transformation. So we haven't any kind of the out transformation. It is inner ones. They were isolated. After that, they are frustrated. They were disillusioned. After that, they are going to, for example, commit suicide. This is harmony out of disharmony that's within themselves. Next one, please. Again, next one. I said this one. About his contribution to contemporary American literature, I believe that if we didn't have Saul Bellow and his writings, there was a kind of a gap in American literature, American concepts, American norms. And the characters he has created have become firmly established in American imagination. After this creating of these characters, we can have destroying and demolishing of American Adams, American dreams. His novels portray, as I said, Saul Bellow is a kind of a great painter. His novels portray characters that are amidst the serious crisis of identity and faith, striving to make sense of life and death. Life and death, both of them are connected to each other. You cannot separate them from each other. They are always come and finish with each other. It is impossible. We cut the connection that they have, relation that they have with each other. If we don't have life, we don't have death. If we don't have death, we don't have any kind of birth. And again, we don't have this recycling. Okay? We should consider this. If suffering is to be seen as a theme of Saul Bellow, that this is so important. It shows that American life, American people, always in the literature, of course, based on multicultural concept that we consider, always have a kind of problem. Always this search for themselves. American Saul Bellow portrays and paints and reflects the society that people always search for money, search for new spirit, search for new religion. Always they are in searching, and these searching sometimes are absurd, sometimes end to abusing by leaders, sometimes is a kind of the absurdity and hollowness, as we have Hollow Man, poem of Hollow Man, in American society. So we should find new ideas, new identities, new concepts based on the reflection that norms and reflections that we can see and study in Saul Bellow's masterpieces. It would be logical to define some specific context. When we speak about the context, always, as you know, we consider the time and settings that our characters are put there to be presented to readers, to critics, and these characters, and characters' context is so important for us to know what kind of thinking, what kind of personalities, and what kind of concepts they search and they have. The dictionary of definition to undergo the feel of pain and distress, injury or loss. All of American people, as I said, they have this kind of pain, this kind of the suffering, this kind of the quest, this kind of the searching for solution. When they haven't any solution, that time they must undergo to feel pain or distress. And when we want to, as I said, to redefine them, the nature of the guilt and punishment they have, the nature of the anxiety and suffering are understood in the special context as Freud's psychology. And as Freud's psychology present us, here I don't want to analyze and open it. Just mention to it is enough that we should consider, based on new psychology, especially if we consider the base as a Freud psychology. And hence it is worthwhile to examine this context in some details about personality, details about psychology, details about the people who try to know who are they. Next one, please. Here we can consider about heroes. Saul Bellow's heroes are all of them are victims of the guilt, a greater or lesser degree, of course. All of them has transgressed, whether consciously or unconsciously. If you study the novel of the Nutshell, you can consider this kind of items, this kind of the concept of guilt and sins before the birth. Okay? That time you will see that human beings consciously or unconsciously carry burden of transgression from childhood. And it is one of the main base of existentialism and determinism that we should consider the child from an early age, prohibited from certain acts by his parents. It is again restriction and determinism, who continually advise him to do some better actions or not to do the bad actions. Something like wetting his pants. Do you remember? We always say to our children, be careful. Whenever you have a problem, you should go to WC, because we don't want our children have this kind of problem. And this is a kind of limitation, because the society doesn't accept this. For example, wetting of his pants, hitting of sleeping, or saying dirty words. We always try to treat our children with good words, and these children, polite children, go to society and learn the words that they never should use in public. So they are determined, they are imposed by society. And Saul Bellow wants to show that this imposing comes from society, but by the society that is considered that we suppose that it is pure and polite society. But no, our societies, as Saul Bellow says, it's not pure one, not sinless, not innocent society. It is full of guilt, full of sins. And gradually, as he matures, we consider these external prohibitions, interjection for Rick's postulation that punishment itself can become unconscious goal of instinctual drives, and suffering can be evaluated as proof of being love. Freud sees sense of guilt the most important problem of development of the civilization. We know that how American society has been built. Most of the guilty and criminals from Europe escaped to Promised Land, to America, and they established this modern and postmodern society, as Freud says. So, the most important problem in the development civilization, the price. Price of what? Price for example, escaping from our identity, escaping from our norms, and make new face, new mask for our advance in civilization. We have all of us studied Thomas Hardy's Mayor of Casterbridge or Victor Hugo's works. Okay, so we know that if we want to build new society, new civilization, we should change. What kind of the change? Sometimes this kind of change that we should hide ourselves, hide our identity, and we must make new identity for making new society, new civilization. As I said, this is a price we pay for our advance in civilization, and loss of happiness through heightening the sense of guilt. If we can hide sense of guilt, if we can ignore that, if we can deny our sense of guilt, as Saul Bellow says, that time we can make new society.
Kian sir?
Yes. Next one, please. Okay, Legend of the Wandering Jew. It is so known legend that we know that Jesus Christ, at the time of the crucifixion, cursed the Jews for wandering for up to resurrection. You know this. And this arises from Christian sources, suggests that Jews' suffering may have been brought upon him by insult to his Savior, means to Jesus Christ. Here is not important that Jesus Christ. It is important that leader that we have in our society. It means that if we have a real leader, as Saul Bellow says, if we deny him or her, if we overlook him or her, that time we will have the problem. Main problem is wandering just like Jews. One version of the religion is that tale of man Jerusalem, as you know, who when Christ was carrying the cross to Calvary, paused the rest of for a moment and drew Savior away, crying loud, walker faster. Christ replied. It is very painful curse that has conveyed from Jesus Christ to Jews. Christ replied, I go, but you will walk until I come again. Okay? So it's base of the wandering of human beings. And here we can mean the wandering, a kind of, as I said, I love this word, quest for our identity, quest for our happiness, quest for our solutions for all of our problems. But Jesus Christ, as Saul Bellow says, prevented from Jews that they cannot achieve it, they cannot obtain it, and they should be wandering up to time of the resurrection. If you consider next page, Richard Lehn says that Sartre, Camus, Bowles, Bellow, Wright, Elysian are concerned with the meaning of identity. Identity is the most important element in existentialism because with our choice, we can have this identity. Identity in modern world, the nature of the good and evil, possibility of the fulfillment in contemporary society. Why in contemporary society? Because it is a globalized village. And this globalized village comes from multicultural society. The course of the values, because the meanings, values have been changed in postmodern world. Maybe sometimes values based just for honesty, just with happiness, just with money, just with good religion, okay? But now, these values completely have been changed. As Nietzsche said, God is dead. And we haven't any kind of the value, we haven't any kind of the criteria, we haven't any kind of index for analyzing who is good, who is bad, which value is worthy, which value is worthless. The possibility of the meaning and action ethnical vacuum. We are completely in vacuum. Our society, we live in a society that we live alone among crowd. In the society, among other people, we are alone. Nobody understands us. Nobody has a communication with us. Because of this, we are among people, we are isolated. The new American hero is similar to French existentialist hero because he shares a common word and similar worldview. Next one, please. For some, no, before. Last one. For some of Bellow's characters, this struggle is a pain without a result. Suppose that we have a kind of the disease, but we haven't any kind of treatment for it. So it is so deep pain, so deep suffering. Is it no, last one. Again, the last page, please. Yes, previous one. For some of Saul Bellow's characters, this struggle is pain without result. Hence, they fail ultimately. But for Roy Hobbes, for Herzog and Henderson, there is a meaning of their suffering. They experience themselves through suffering. Without suffering, they haven't any kind of struggle. They haven't any kind of identity. They haven't any kind of meaning for their lives. For them, suffering brings understanding. And it is a paradox that we have in postmodern literature, that by suffering, we can find understanding. And acceptance of themselves in their anguished existential condition, suffering, the most important suffering, the most important pain that we can have in the Saul Bellow's literature or Saul Bellow's works, masterpieces, it comes from this question: who am I? It is clear that man's suffering, based on the action and instruction that he has been instructed. And this instruction means that he has been determined without any kind of the freedom and choice for their life, for future, for his own identity. Okay? Because of this, we try to have new form of the meaning and concepts for the characters that have all of them are being restricted and limited, and they are imposed with new ideas that they cannot digest it. Next one, please. Saul Bellow also deals with the theme of alienation. This alienation has come with the lack of communication, lack of understanding, as I said. If we can have this kind of understanding and communication and relationship with other people in the society, at that time we haven't any kind of the problem. Because of this, Herzog cannot tolerate his second wife, and he tries to get divorced from her. Because they haven't any kind of communication, like a happy spouse, a couple spouse. Okay? He has done it in a special manner, a theme that arises naturally, inevitably out of the Jewish experience. Because Jewish always wandered, Jewish always isolated, Jewish in all of societies are hated. And the American Jew, in a unique sense, marginal man. Just like if you remember last lecture about the black man, like that, Jews are marginal. They are not real one. They are not main characters. They are main elements and members of the society. Unlike Irish, German, Italian, slave, Jews are minority groups. Because they had, at that time, they hadn't any kind of country. Because they hadn't country, they hadn't any kind of nationality. They were alone. They were isolated. They were a kind of the minority, cut off from the majority of the world, from the Christians, from the Muslims of the world. Even before they immigrate, he brings with him two cultures. Culture's country, just like that we have in literature, and in literary works, that they speak about immigration, about the changing of the country, finding new culture, living in new and maybe different culture and different society. This is so important for them. Even before they immigrate, he brings with him two cultures, culture of the country, German, Hungary, Russia, and other ones. And he is product of two words determined not by American experience, that have been mixed with second culture that I want to indicate with his inner spiritual culture that comes with his beliefs, his own personality and characters that they had. By the memory of exile, American experience that comes by memory of exile. When you are in exile, you are alone, you are isolated, and nobody understands you. Nobody can understand you because nobody have a communication and relation with you. When you have any kind of communication and relation, nobody can understand you. In America he is exposed to put of an uproar mobile, striving for American ethic, oriented culture in which rewards are primary materialistic rather than spiritual. Remember that in American society, money talks. The most important thing that you should consider is the money, and after that, spirituality. It can serve a bridge to American and European culture. Of course, it is possible because Americans live in a multicultural society. But he has nothing to do with those experiences because he never involved directly, which are deeply and specifically American. Of course, we don't have, because we haven't any kind of pure American. We have Irish one, we have American, we have German, we have Scottish, and from other countries, but we haven't somebody who is originally and basically American, but American Indians. Next one, please. This sense of alienation being strangers in a strange land, and it is, again, as I said, it is one of the elements that we have in modern literature. And modern man has this kind of sense of to be strange with everybody. Nobody can understand him. America is no nation of immigrants. As I said, you can define it, immigrants here, as a multicultural. Profoundest literature has always reflected loneliness of man in American literature. Man cut off from his origin, uncertain of his position, and hostile universe. Because we cannot have a communication even with all of the world. And when we haven't any kind of good communication or relation with these structures, that time universe will be hostile. Next one. Alienation implies not only distances but an attack, oblique, direct or status quo. Marcus Claim defined it as beginning of American literature in that deliberate strategy of this content, which was enunciated just before World War I by Van Wey's books and Randolph Bird, which was dominant mood of our literature until just yesterday. The posture of dissent comes naturally to one who comes late to American experience, American society, American life, and American ideologies that based on American Adam and American dreams. Or this promise about the promised land that comes from Jews' legendary and concepts, who has been conditioned to a hatred or winning authority by history of operation. When we speak about this authority, it means that a kind of the determinism that you should consider in every line, every page of the Saul Bellow's masterpieces, whether Dangling Man or Herzog. Again, next one. There is a subjectivity of American fiction. The trending involved personal rather than group symbols to psychological rather social concept. When we speak about psychological, we mean that our characters are alone. Because psych is about man alone. But when we speak about society, we speak about the members and social members, I mean. This turning about has become a kind of patterning insert by fusing contemporary current Freudian psychology, existentialism, a nation, which Saul Bellow has managed in his masterpiece, of course. The paradox of finding harm in life brought with constant anguish, frustrating failure, is suggestive and more central paradox, which is implicit in every Saul Bellow's novel. In Saul Bellow's view, man's condition is to be caught between extremes. It is so painful, so based on suffering, that human being hasn't any kind of debate for escaping. He is caught in a maze, and between extremes, between good and bad, between beautiful and ugly, between state of war, state of peace, always we are caught between these extremes, and nobody can, unfortunately, help us. Bellow has never resolved in his own life dilemmas. As I said, dilemma is one of the basic notions that we have, in existential concepts. Because when we speak about dilemmas, that time we mean that we try to find solution. We find a kind of the between two challenges, two struggles, sometimes between two catastrophes, to live or to die. Both of them are catastrophic, and living itself is so painful, and death is more painful. Which of them can be a solution for us? So it is existentialist view that we should consider which of them we are going to choose. Saul Bellow took two different directions, desiring on one hand to be a man who strongly asserts his wills. But it is important. It is important that we consider this will is based on freedom, and we don't have freedom because we are determined. We are imposed with so many ideas, so many ideologies, so many norms that are imposed to us, and we cannot escape from them. Clayton finds in Saul Bellow a frustrated novelist who is not able to practice what he professes. His novels fall short of success because unresolvable conflicts. We have so many conflicts: social conflicts, religious conflicts, financial conflicts. All of them should be solved. But why? How? And based on which elements? Why we should solve this problem at all? Why we need to solve these problems? If we live in this complex, what will happen? All of them are questions that we should find its answers in Saul Bellow, especially Herzog, masterpiece Herzog. Clayton believes that although Saul Bellow commits himself to defense of mind, he doesn't know what's to be defended because there is no mind at all. There is no spirit at all. There is no humanity for Saul Bellow. So when we don't have these elements, these notions, these norms, how we can defend. Next one, please. Dangling is a story that about Joseph. He dangles in a state of isolation and alienation. He's waiting for induction into army. His attempts to gain sense of identity. As I said, in last lecture, I indicated a quiz about identity. Here, we indicated always we search for identity. Always we search for something that it is important. And here, in Dangling Man and Herzog, both of them, we consider for identity. So he slipped into a narcotic dullness. Joseph possessed problems of an ordinary man. When we speak about ordinary man, we mean that, as Shakespeare in Julius Caesar says, about a mob, about persons, they have power, but they don't have mind. Straightforward traditional society rules and values. If you, as Saul Bellow believes that, just like Shakespeare, if we in society encounter with a mob, because they don't have any kind of the smartness and the intellectuality, and as they believe, any kind of the sight, they just have the power without mind, power without thinking, power without intellectuality and smartness. So it is so dangerous, more dangerous than atomic bomb. Because in atomic bomb, you know how to control it. But in the mob, when they have power without mind, without spirituality, without any thinking, that time it is completely uncontrollable. And we should consider. And Saul Bellow is so sensitive about this. He suffers in his self-imposed isolation. Sometimes some of the people are in self-exile, just James Joyce. They try to escape from society and they want to be isolated. Because of this, we consider this self-exiling is just for intellectuals, for smart people, for somebody who understands everything and tries to put himself or herself away from the society. Because of this, I call it self-imposed isolation. The chaos of the world at war and lack of stable, stratified traditional society that rules and values provides strength at the time of crisis. This crisis comes from conflicts that, as I indicated, can be financial, can be marital, can be social, can be religious one. All of them are conflict that, and these conflicts completely surrounded us. And finding of the solution for this maze, for escaping from this maze, so important for humanity. Again, next one, next page, please. Another novel from Saul Bellow has, of course, is a form of novella. It is masterpiece of human encountering with error, pretension, and death. It is so important that we know how we can face with death. If we can solve this problem of the dying, that time we haven't any problem, something like greedy, such as slaying, such as cruelty. That time we can live as human beings. Tommy Wilhelm is done on his luck. He fares as a son, as a husband, as an actor. He's completely failed one in society. And this failed one has no identity, has no choice. When he has no choice, no identity, he tries to have a new way, new way for life, based on imposed ideology, ideology that comes, doesn't come. I mean, doesn't come from his own mind, comes from society. He lives in New York Quarter again, past to think of his past life or foolish decisions. When we speak about decisions, always it comes again with choice, existentialist norms. If we have any kind of a decision, that time it means that we have a mind, we have a thinking, we have a kind of smartness for choosing between good and bad, beautiful and ugly. He lives in New York hotel, as I said, and in desperation, at last he gives last small savings to his friend to invest community markets. Herzog is exploration of mind, or Jewish American scholar, because Herzog is great intellectual one, but isolated, because society cannot understand him. Society always refuses him. Society always tries to put him aside. So, because of this, as I said, he has a kind of self-exile, self-imposed strangeness, any kind of the lack of understanding from the society. And this lack of understanding, lack of communication is mutual for both of them, for society and for Herzog. The protagonist Herzog is twice divorced. It is so important. Twice, 2 times, 2 different ladies refused to live with him. Herzog is cuckold, and because he couldn't satisfy his wife 2 times, he has been refused by his wives as a symbol of social members, as a symbol of the modern society. He suffers nervous tension and reviews his past failures about his marital life. How I rose from humble origin to complete disaster. It is Saul Bellow considers this one as a slogan, as a motto for his novels. How I rose from humble origins to complete disaster means that I was an innocent one, sinless one, without any guilt. But the society considered me that to be a guilty one, to be a criminal. So I should complete this disaster of the humanity. Hence he traveled back and forth between New York and Chicago. Herzog is engaged in searching. When we speak about searching, means that it is a quiz for life, quiz for identity, quiz for personality, that they try to find the answer to the so many questions. And the most important question is that how should a good man live? How he can? Just by dying. By dying, a good man can live. It is paradox of the modernity, paradox of the existentialism, paradox that we have in postmodern life, that life and norms, that if you want to be good one, you should be died. Just like Shakespeare. We say that he was a good man because he's dead now. We say Victor Hugo is a good one. Why? Because he's dead now. If we consider alive ones, that time we have the problem, because they may have a challenge with us. Maybe the put under questions our norms, our societies, our beliefs, our ideologies, because they're alive. If they are dead, so that time we haven't any problem for challenging. So the best one is dead one. Of course, for Saul Bellow, not for me. If you consider the last page, Lord, please, last page. No. The last page of this PowerPoint. Next one. Next one. Okay. No. Previous one. Okay, thank you. It is the conclusion that we want to have. Human beings, in Saul Bellow's works, as a modern man, according to existentialism, yearns for perfection, but never find these perfections. If one thing is achieved for modern man, always he loses so important things. After perfection, after getting perfection by humanity, he or she noticed that he has lost his own life or her own life. Everything that we achieve as Saul Bellow, according to modernity and according to existentialism, if we want to have a clear conclusion, is that human beings, if can find perfection, it equals with losing his life, losing of his happiness. And this short span, this craving, shifts to another. From happiness to suffering, from happiness to painful life. And we should consider that consciousness brings always state of being for itself, being for himself, being for herself, being for modernity, being for humanity. And Bellow's protagonist characters, as a symbol of the modern men, are iconic to real human beings with their hopes, with their illusions, with desires, that all of them, without any exceptions, are frustrated, disillusioned, and became hopeless in modern world without achieving any result, without achieving any kind of acceptance from the society. And because of this, humanity in modern life is a norm that has no value for leaders, for people who hasn't any kind of intellectuality and smartness, but they have power. And because of this, as Saul Bellow says, that if you have mind, if you have intellectuality and smartness, if you don't have power, as Michel Foucault says, that time you haven't any value. And first you should find power, then value, then humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, I can.
Actually feeling very glad for getting associated with such an erudite speaker. Thank you, Kian sir, for giving profound insights and revealing it with facts. So I'm very much thankful to you for getting on this forum. Dr. Shaminaz madam, are we going to take the question answer session?
Yes.
Yeah. Dear delegates, participants, erudite speakers, distinguished writers, and research scholars, now we will have a question answer session. So if you want to ask any question to Kian sir, please put your question in the chat box.
Can I ask one question? Kian sir, it is a little bit personal related with American literature. Sir, you are an Iranian residing in Iran, and you are most of the times you are interested in American literature. Do you find it hard? Means in Iran, which is where condition are hostiles because of the American interference in Iranian matter. Do people accuse you?
No, no, it is just among the government, not about the people, about the writers. We never involved in the hostility between Americans and Iranians. We have this hostility between governments. It's not about us. Don't worry about it.
Okay. And
we have a good connection with the writers. We have a good connection with the people. We have a good connection with the cultures. Okay, because just now more than 5 million people, Iranian people, live in the United States, and we have a good connection with them. They have a good connection with the society. Just some hostility about the governments, not about people.
okay, sir, I would request you to tell us about your books, because you have done remarkable work in the field of language and linguistic.
I didn't get your question. Would you again?
Sir, you have done remarkable work in the field of language and linguistic in terms of books. So please tell us about your books. People are not aware about your books. And how can we download them?
I can send you my ebooks for you, and you can give it to your colleagues. One of them is about the analyzing of American poetry, and I try to have postmodern views about the analyzing and criticizing them, interpreting them. Another one is about the modern American and English drama, because I love American, especially black drama. I don't know why. It is a kind of the impress that I got so many years ago from one of the good American black writer. After that, I tried to have a more and more study, and my students, MA and PhD students, I always recommend to them to study and work on the postmodern black American drama. And another is about the short stories, analyzing of the postmodern short stories, okay, and minimalistic, based on the linguistic and psychological view that I try to analyze these short stories, and I can send you the PDF if you want, ebooks if you want. It's a great honor for me that I can send for you.
Yes, sure, sir.
Kian sir, we have one question from Anita Sharma ma'am. She wants to know, what would you say about the element of honor killing in postmodern literature of Middle East?
About the Middle East, we have
Element of honor killing in postmodern literature of Middle East.
if you consider, I want to answer generally. If you consider Middle East literature and Iranian Arab literature, I don't know to say, fortunately or unfortunately, we have under influence of the modern French and English literature. Because of this, we have used some literature, some elements and concepts that are familiar for everybody. Because of this, maybe we don't have any kind of Nobel Prize from Middle East, from Arab world, or from Iranian literature. Okay, these elements in concepts are common and have been said before in United States and French and English literature, and maybe in Middle East have been imitated. And we haven't any kind of the originality about our works. Even in our modern, postmodern literature, in Persian literature or Arab literature, that I studied some of them.
Okay, Kian, so there is one more question from Dharmendra Kumar Singh. Actually, I am not completely getting the question, but I would like to say what he has quoted here. Is existentialism in the essence of all literary works? 2-3 question mark is there. Is
I didn't get your
existentialism?
question.
Dharmendra sir, can you unmute yourself and ask the question, please? Dharmendra sir, are you there? Will you unmute yourself and ask the question?
It is a very philosophical question that we exist or to think to exist. It is completely philosophical. And we can say that both of them, always it comes together. We think because we exist because we think. Okay? We cannot separate them each other. Is it possible we say that I exist, I live, I have a life, but I can't think? Right. Or I think without life. Is it possible? But because of this, these both of them should come with each other. Even crazy people, even stupid people and silly people have this thinking, but they have in their own border, their own limitation and restriction. And this is impossible. It is completely impossible that in existentialists we separate them. But the meanings and concepts that we use here is completely different with this question. We have life, but some of the people, some of the philosophers say that we are a kind of the puppets for God or gods. They play with us as they love. Okay? This playfulness, this happiness that we make for them, it's a kind of the reflection of the nature of the gods. That maybe, of course, I speak about gods, not about God. Gods. Maybe they are cruel to human beings, that they want just some kind. We created us because they want to have a kind of the toy for their leisure and spare time to play, and sometimes for laughing to us.
Thank you, sir. Again, we have one more question from Rohini Arya. She says, it is said that literature is the mirror of the society. Like that, do the characters of your selected works show some sort of reality there?
Yes, it is a kind of the reflection that Saul Bellow tries to use in Dangling and Herzog. There are kind of reflection and mirror of the society, but what kind of society? Society of intellectuals, not common people, not mobs, as Shakespeare says. It is a kind of the reflection that who has more pain? Intellectuals have more pain because they have more understanding. So, because they don't have physical power, they have just power of the mind. They cannot always challenge with the society. Because of this, they, as Herzog, as Dangling that we have, in Herzog and Dangling, I mean, we have, they, after time, after so many challenges, after so many struggling, striving, because cannot solve the problems, because they don't have, as Michel Foucault says, because they don't have any social, financial, or any kind of the power that can impose themselves to the society, they try to have a self-exile, self-restriction. And they go to home, just think there, without any kind of action. And it is a disaster for society. And Saul Bellow clearly, very nicely, marvelously reflects this situation, intellectual situation in modern society that nobody understands them. We can give example about ourselves. How many people you can find in society, they say that literature is valuable for us, for our life. They say, oh, you just study two lines of the poetry and you are happy for yourself. But you cannot earn money with your poetry, with your short story, with your novel. So it is nothing. It is absurd for common people. Because of this, we have a very limited communication with common people. You cannot, for example, you cannot express your ideas to a taxi driver, to a butcher, to a, for example, elementary school teacher, because they cannot understand. Maybe, of course, I don't want to insult them. I said maybe they cannot understand and digest our ideas and philosophy. Saul Bellow's characters are as the same. Nobody understands them. Nobody have a communication with them. Because of this, they have a self-exile and self-restriction, and nobody, they try to have a very less communication with other people.
Thank you, sir. We have a next one, tricky sort of question. Dr. Ghanshyam sir, he has rightly pointed out, do we exist because we think, or we exist to think? What is your...
I answered, I said that both of them is the same. We cannot separate them each other. Because if we say that I am alive, so I have a thinking. If I think, so I am alive. We have a philosophy question that we say that which of them comes before, hen or egg?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Same is quote of Matthew Arnold also. Whether the creative activity is paramount or important, or the critical activity.
Yes. And one of your colleagues asked question that what's the good man according to her?
We have a next question of Shahnaz Khan.
Yes, ma'am.
ask question?
At one point, Sir pointed out that in Saul Bellow, a good man, he tries to portray how a good man should live.
According to Saul
So
Bellow,
what is a good man? What is your, Saul Bellow's idea of a good man, or for that matter, a bad man then? Yes, sir.
okay. If you consider the good man,
Yeah.
that time you can answer the side man.
Sound is...
Shahnaz ma'am, please mute yourself.
Kindly, yeah, Shahnaz ma'am.
Yes. Am I audible?
Ma'am, please.
You are
Yes,
audible.
yes.
Mute yourself.
Okay.
Yes, Kian.
If you consider this question, and if you want to answer to the question, it is better that we consider just who is a good man according to Saul Bellow, or modern society and according to existentialism. If we consider this one, is that good man, ironically and paradoxically, is somebody who never hurts society, hasn't make any problem for society. But intellectuals always make problem for society because they try to have a challenge and struggle with the society, because we want to have a kind of the paradise. We want to make utopia. Never common people understand what does it mean utopia. Intellectuals always try to create utopia. So, good man, according to existentialism, according to absurdity, according to Saul Bellow, ironically, is somebody who never challenged society.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Welcome. You're
I think
Hello, good evening.
Achha.
Hello, good evening.
Yes,
I
good
would
evening.
like to ask a question. Actually, it was an excellent lecture, very insightful, and it was very analytical, and various threads have been connected together, like identity crisis, harmony and disharmony among the characters, alienation, isolation. Various such issues have been brought out very clearly by the speaker. My question is, the protagonists are the characters in Saul Bellow. Do they not live in the subjective world and they suffer from the neurosis and inability to cope with the surroundings around them, inability to cope with the worldly affairs? They're more into the subjective world than in the objective world. And does the author offer a solution? Does he propose a model that how the transformation of the character can take place from this subjective world, how they can be brought from this subjective arena into the objective real world? So we can call that sometimes the subjective world becomes too virtual in the sense, unreal, or which world is real is again a debatable. Existentialism again is another issue, which I think they grapple with because of this inability to cope with the depression, the psychoneurosis, and more of the characters, they are psychological. More of the authors like this, they are writing in psychological based characters, psychological oriented, and Freud and other psychological theories coming in, and the diaspora element of diaspora, alienation, isolation, migration, so many issues jumbled up. So does any writer like Saul Bellow or for that matter any other propose a solution for evolving the characters into the surviving beings?
One of the styles that Saul Bellow used in Dangling and Herzog is the letter writing. When we cannot have a communication with society, we try to record our minds. If we can record our minds for next generation or social members that can have ability to understand this one, is one of the solutions that Saul Bellow present to us in his novels. Okay, so the best way is that expressing ourselves. This expressing ourselves, this presenting ourselves in Saul Bellow's comes with a letter writing. When nobody understands them, suppose that these intellectuals are mad people, crazy people. Because of this, they have problem with other social members. I want to give an example. After Revolution 1917 in Russia, anybody who tried to have a challenge in the communist society, they put them in the jail. And after time that they said that, do you know why put them in jail? Because they are crazy. Because they have psychological problems. Why they have psychological problems? Because they say they express some ideas that its digestion is so difficult for common people. Because of this, they say that we try to put them aside and try to keep them in a way that never hurt the society. Most of the writers in Russia after the revolution has more and more books and texts about the society, about themselves. And it shows that they weren't crazy, they weren't insane. Okay? So it is Saul Bellow in postmodern form again express this solution by, for example, in Herzog, they say that if you can express yourself in as you say, in objective form, what you have in your mind in subjective form, express them in objective form. What is the objective? Here is the writing of the books, writing of the letters. That time you may have a time, may you have a chance for have a communication with other people again. With people maybe have as same as you intellectuality, smartness, but they haven't ability, they haven't chance to have a communication directly with you. So Saul Bellow believes that and express this solution, that if we can make all of our ideas, all of the subjective norms that we have in our minds, and express them in objective form, as you said, in harmonical form, not in disharmonical, harmonical form, in letters, in books, in essays, and express your ideas for people who can understand you. That time we may rebuild the society. We make new forms of structures for our society. We may have the new social norms if we can. I emphasize upon this. If we can express our subjective norms and concepts according in the objective forms. In objective forms, here I mean that in writing forms, in written forms, I mean in the structures that can be clear for anybody who has the same idea, same ideology, same view as us, as a writer. Okay, that time it is, I suppose, is the best way, best solution for this problem, from passing from disharmony to harmony, because sometimes subjective norms cannot be expressed clearly. That time maybe be a kind of disharmony, and Saul Bellow tries to have this disharmony in new frames, in a new harmony.
Thank you. Thank you. So with this question, we end the question and answer session. Let's move on. Now we have with us Dr. Nirja Sachdeva ma'am, who has presided over this session. I would give a brief introduction of Nirja Sachdeva ma'am to all of you. We have with us very dynamic and distinguished professor, Dr. Nirja Sachdeva ma'am. She is an associate professor and the head department of English in SS Khanna Girls Degree College, Allahabad. She has been teaching English since 40 years. She is the co-editor of the books entitled Absolute Swaraj and Classroom Attendance, an Indicator of Education to Life. She has organized a number of seminars and workshops. Similarly, she has presented papers in many international seminars, and she has visited Nepal and Sri Lanka as well. When we talk about her achievements, I would like to point out a few achievements here, because we are running out of time. She has received Best Paper Award for her paper entitled Kumbh Mela, a confluence of religion and faith, by Prayag Kumbh Cultural Heritage of the World in 2018. She has received Rashtriya Gaurav Award by Indian International Friendship Society in 2015, and very proud to us, ma'am, she has received Best Teacher of the City in 2012. So I welcome Dr. Nirja Sachdeva ma'am here on behalf of the society, and now I hand over the session to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Savita Patil, for inviting me to chair the session. And it's my great pleasure to be here. And first of all, let me wish good evening to all of you, and especially to our keynote speaker, Professor Kian sir, and to our host, Dr. Sheminaz, to our Dr. Jyoti Patil, who is not present, unfortunately, and to Ghanshyam sir, as well as to you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And let me first of all say that Professor Kian, your lecture was very, very insightful and very enlightening. I mean, we were really enamored by hearing you on so many aspects of Saul Bellow's, not only novels, but also of his life. And he is, of course, Saul Bellow is a Pulitzer Prize winner as well as a Nobel Prize winner, and for his works. And his works are mainly the mixture of rich picaresque novel and subtle analysis of our culture, of entertaining and advocating drastic and tragic episodes in quick succession, interspersed with philosophical conversations in his novels. And you have taken up the aspects of the Dangling Man and Herzog, but at the same time you have talked a lot about his works and his personality also. And mostly, I will say you have told us that Saul Bellow paints a humanizing picture, and this picture may be dark and dim, but it is a nice painting of humanity and a challenge for man for his freedom, and as well as philosophical and social concepts. They come from man's own actions and beliefs, and we have so many concepts of this in Saul Bellow's novels. And you have also talked about modernism, and you have said that it is a movement that descends from this development of, talking about, when you're talking about the characters of the Dangling Man, that how smart and how intelligent they are, and most of the characters, they are intellectuals. And if they are intellectuals, they have no sense for society, for others' actions, and they are distinct. And you can what you have tried to say, that they have reflected their own identity in themselves, because they stand and say, who am I and where do I belong to? And that's after hearing you, that's a question which is dominating not only Saul Bellow's world or the world of American culture, but I would say this is very much dangling. This question is dangling so much in the Indian world also, because each one of us, when we are thinking or we enter into that inner transactions, as you have expressed, we will find that these are the questions which tend to dominate our minds also. And in American literature, we don't have, and you have also expressed that in American literature we do not have classics. And we have books that are jumping and linking, and these are the terms that you used. And we sometimes this is good and sometimes it's bad also. But there's a maturity in it, and we can also have a gap in American literature. And you have tried to show, the transition from the from the European and the French literature into the American world also. But at the same time, you have said that modernism and postmodernism, I mean, even though they have come from Europe and France, but of course they cannot outdo or outstand the American literature. And there are a couple of things you have said that are happening, and one of them you said is about classification that is emerging from a culture of American society in the modern society. And it is a multicultural society, multifarious society, whether they are Indians. I mean, in America especially, you'll find this multifarious society, whether they are Indians, whether they are French, whether they are Chinese. All of them are living and residing in America. And so you can see the culture of all the other nations are also contributing to some extent in the American culture also. And that is why American culture and American literature has become a global literature. And it puts aside all the traditional values, because we have in the modern literature, or in the phrase of modernism, as you will say, we have new ideas and new frames and new concepts. And modernism is also a culture. Nobody tries to show its own identity or real identity as such, and it exists more in an abstract form. But they have certain challenges to face also, as you have said. And human life has never been very intelligible. We are all the time having a quest for something or the other. And mainly we have a quest for the humanity, as you said, and not only about humanity, but about our roots and about our culture. Saul Bellow, as you said, believed that we all of us are abused by gods. And these gods are not the god above the spiritual god, but they may be the gods as leaders of the country, leaders of the world, or leaders of the society, or even of the financial center. But these questions, are of vital importance in our life. And another thing that you reflected was that Saul Bellow has a very positive approach. And even if we go back to the times of the Adam and Eve, we have had so many pains and catastrophes existing. I mean, the struggle that has been existed in the life of a man right from the time of the beginning of the origin of life. Still we say, or still as you have tried to show, that Saul Bellow, of course, portrays most powerful people in a very positive manner. And Herzog is, of course, a very intellectual and a smart character in his novel Herzog. He cannot stand in society even while vacillating between the two wives. He cannot even have a good relations with the two wives. But these protagonists, even though they are, they have raised themselves, as you said, from the dust and from an urchin into an intellectual world, but they have also tried to, compromise with death. And they have tried, in Herzog especially, I mean, he has tried to write letters to his families, to his friends, to his colleagues, to the president and everybody. But actually, those letters are not the letters that have been sent. But these personalities, as you said, they consistently revive themselves, and they have tried to emancipate human psyche from disheartening and pessimistic ideology. And what you will say and what you have said is, I agree, is the acceptance of life that they have shown as it is. And they show the reader how to live. And that is the most important thing. As one of our colleagues, you would say, or one of the professors asked the question that literature is a mirror to life. Of course it is a mirror to life. And as you have just answered very intelligently, that if we put the subjective into the objective through the books, that is through the writings, then we are able to see and find out what life is about and what life is, because literature is a study of humanity, and Saul Bellow especially has tried to pervade into the realms of this root cause of this humanity, and he has also tried to find a new identity which is so amazing and so marvelous. And this can be, and if we read into and go into the depths of it, it can be a savior for all of us. And his writing is a mixture of Pishkar's novels also, and concepts that Saul Bellow tries to convey to us are smart characters, intelligent characters, which have a style of speaking and communicating which is unique, different from others, from other distinguished persons. And you have talked about the problem of dilemma, or you can say the conflict that is there, and this is one of the pains of existentialism, and we need a kind of a leader for that. And Saul Bellow shows that it is so important for us how we can choose when we have dilemma in our lives, whether it is the past or the present life. And another point which we have reflected is that Saul Bellow is a painter. He paints American culture, and he gives a very sympathetic portrait of the struggle to find and how to command and how to resolve those problems in life. That is also a very interesting part that you have talked about Saul Bellow. And if we do not have writers like Saul Bellow, then as you express, and I very well truly agree with you, that there will definitely be a gap in the American literature. And not only in American literature, but in American Adams and American Dreams, as you had said. And his novels portray characters who have a sense of life, a reflective society, and also they tend to show a search for money, for religion, for faith, which sometimes, as you said, appears absurd, abusive, and reflects also hollowness. But we should find out new ideas and new concepts based on the reflection of norms and society. And as Saul Bellow's heroes are victims also, as you said, and they are suffering from guilt and sins. And these guilt and sins, you can, as you said, they emerge from the very childhood, and due to the restrictions and determinism. But all of them have been transgressed, and we carry these transgressions from childhood onward. And so this is also one of the aspects that you have dealt with, Saul Bellow. And at the same time, you have also talked about the theme of alienation, the theme of suffering, and dealt on the question of who am I, that is the quest for identity, because identity is the most important element of existentialism, and especially in this globalized village because of multicultural, multidimensional values that are existing in this present day society. And Saul Bellow tries to bridge American and European culture, but he has nothing to do with those expectations which are deeply, or expressions which are deeply American. And America, of course, has right from the beginning has been a nation of immigrants, reflecting at the same time, and because it is culture which is lying dormant with so many other cultures of life, it also reflects loneliness of man, because naturally trying to identify and adopting that culture, that American culture, is very difficult. So he talks about, Saul Bellow talks about American fiction, about Freudian psychology, and his characters are caught between extremes. That was another point that you said, between good and bad. And when a person is caught between these two extremes, he is stranded in a maze. He does not know where to go and where to find the path. He's puzzled. And Saul Bellow has so many these unresolvable conflicts, but he takes the defense of the mind and he tries to find out, come out of that maze. And in Herzog and in Dangling Man, both he's tried to show that how from a humble urchin you have tried to acquire yourself for your identity. You have shown how to live and how to be a good man. And his protagonists, Saul Bellow's protagonists, are iconic to real human beings with hopes and frustrations. And according to this existentialism, he yearns for perfection. And especially the protagonist of the Saul Bellow's novel, the novels rather would echo with not losing one's identity, but trying to find one's life, one's happiness with power, value, and humanity. So, that's a lot more and umpteen things that you have talked about and reflected so minutely and so expressively that I was really enamored and taken. And what I have spoken and I've just given a gist of it is very little, and it in a way does not comprehend the whole lecture also. But I'm sure I'll get another chance to be with you and to listen to you and be enamored by your works. Thank you so much, sir.
It was an honor for me. That for the second time I was at your I visited you. I tried to have a communication with you. It is a great honor for me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nirja ma'am, for your intellectual remark. I express thanks to all of you for getting associated with this forum. Now I may request Priyanka to pay the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. It is not happiness that but gratitude that brings us happiness. It is really a matter of great happiness for me to extend heartfelt thanks to everyone present here. I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Professor Kian Pishkar for his valuable talk. It was a really very enriching session, sir. I would like to extend my thanks to our founder, Dr. J. Ghansam, for encouraging presence, and our President, Professor Dr. Jyoti Patil, for her constant support. I would like to thank the chairperson, Dr. Nita Satdeva, for the valuable time that she has given to the event. My sincerest gratitude goes to Dr. Savita Patil for conducting the event so successfully. And last but not the least, I would like to express my gratefulness to Dr. Shemnaz Bano, without whose enthusiasm and hard work today's event would not have been possible. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you, ma'am and sir. I would now like to invite Nurul for presenting the certificate.
Good evening, everyone. This is certificate of appreciation, but also a token of love from India to Iran. This is for our resource person, Professor Kian Pishkar. Thank you so much, sir, for your informative and wonderful lecture. Thank you so much from the whole team of ISPL.
Thank you, Dr. Shahinaz Banu. It's a great honor for me. I hope to visit you in Iran. All of your colleagues, I hope to visit in Iran.
Yes, sir. And sir, Ghanshyam sir, Kian Pishkar sir always request me to bring Indian delegate to Iranian in some conference. Maybe in future we will definitely visit Tehran or Iran, especially your university.
I hope so. I hope so. It will be a very great honor and happiness for me.
Nurul, next certificate. This is certificate of appreciation to our chairperson, Dr. Nirja Sajdev, for giving us her valuable remark. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you so much.
This is certificate of appreciation to Dr. Savita Patil for successfully conducting this long seminar. And last but not the least, this is for Priyanka Pandey for being the moderator of today's event. Thank you. Thank you everyone and attending this virtual platform, and thank you to all the viewers who are hearing us on Facebook. Is Ghanshyam sir here? Sir, I am ending the live now.
Yes, please do so.
Thank you.
And as far as what you said about Iran, I ran to Iran.
Yes.